Okay, great. So welcome everybody. I'll call this meeting of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability to order at 6:02 p.m. on August 13th, 2024. So we'll go to roll call, which I've got the list in front of me here, so I can just go down the list. Tara Dunderdale.
Here.
Justin Vassell, I'm here. Matt Austin.
Present.
Zero Rose. John Eldon.
Here.
Dave Rollo.
Here.
Jessica Davis. Hunter Hawley.
Here.
Jamie Scholl.
Here.
Evan Nix.
Here.
Caitlin Edwards. Dennis Vera. David Maynor. And Andrew Gunther. Okay, so I'll note the presence of a quorum. So our next agenda item here is the approval of the agenda. Are there any requested modifications to the agenda as it's stated up here? Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda as it is listed up here, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the agenda is approved. We'll go to the approval of minutes from June 11th, 2024. Does anybody have any changes that they'd like to suggest? I don't know if we have a version up on the screen, but. So I'll offer one amendment. There were some items at the end of the minutes that were in red. Those were holdovers from the agenda. They were placeholders that meant to be eventually become minutes, but we didn't get through all that part of the agenda. So I would just suggest that we scrap all of that and leave the rest unchanged. So I will move to make that amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Any discussion? Okay.
You have a second. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
It was a race. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, so the agenda will be, or I'm sorry, the minutes will be amended. Are there any other suggested amendments to the minutes? Okay, so hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. So we've got 10 minutes for public comment. If anyone from the gallery would like to come and speak, they are welcome to. We've got 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone from the gallery who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to reports from commissioners. So, and actually I'll note that David Maynor is here. Okay. And are you Zero?
Yep.
Good to meet you. Okay, so reports from commissioners. I've got a set of slides here. I'll do a quick chair's report.
Pulled up and it disappeared. Okay, I'm gonna have to go to my email. Is it this one? Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay. And it says the screen sharing is paused, so I don't know if anyone
Okay.
jumps online or not.
Okay, let me share this one instead.
Well, while that's getting set up, I'll just say it's an exciting day for us. We've got several new commissioners, so we want to extend a very warm welcome to them. And I was thinking we could just go around the room to everyone who's new. You could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and what about the Commission on Sustainability seems interesting to you. So we'll start here with you, Rose.
Zero Rose, kind of from the nonprofit sector, Blue Bee Ecological Endeavors. We have a holistic housing program, which is social service work. Kind of interested in the fusion of equity and sustainability that is seemingly the purview of the commission. And, you know, I've been somewhat interactive since the commission formed, years ago, I did video PSAs for, the initial search for ideas from the public, asking for input. And basically, I think that the environmental take on things can be the solution to the economic and poverty issues. And, they usually don't meet. One's an afterthought to the other. So that's where I'd like to focus up. I'll be on the front end of a learning curve of figuring out what the commission has been doing. And so I appreciate anybody filling me in on any of that.
Great. Hunter Hawley, nice to meet all of you. I originally came to Bloomington in 2017 as an IU student. Left with my now wife, who went to grad school down in Dallas for a few years. And just this June, the two of us came back up to Bloomington. So very happy to be back in town. This time on the other side of getting my IU degree. And now I get to, with the rest of you, be upset about the upcoming weekend's events of our town being overrun by all the students coming in. So you'll see me at the Dimension Mill most days. I work in technology. Started a company while I was in college doing sports statistics for the NBA. Sold that company, and now I'm working on a company called Periodic, which is a technology, not quite startup, but it's a pretty small team. Feels like a startup a lot of days. So similar, very interested in how we can kind of look at sustainability as a broad topic of what does our environment need, what does our economy need, what makes Bloomington a great place to live in 50 years or 100 years, just like I think it is today.
I'm Tara Dunderdale. I have lived in Bloomington for 2 years. My parents have been here for almost 20, and we came to be closer to them. I have 2 young children. My background is in education and education policy. I work now also in the nonprofit sector as a program evaluator for a tutoring program. I have gotten pretty involved in some sort of like very local sustainability work with my neighborhood and invasive cleanup and sort of neighborhood resilience projects. I am particularly interested in sort of the intersection between sustainability, environmental work, and disability justice, accessibility, and like really focus on the needs of marginalized groups, including children.
I'm Dave Rollo. I serve on this commission from the City Council, where I've been for a couple of decades. And I used to be on the Environmental Commission back in the 90s. And when I ran for office, my primary aim was to bring sustainability into city government. So I wrote the code to create the commission back in 2005. And it was because the Environmental Commission was just not entirely suited to recognize the challenges of the future. That is, humanity's overshoot of carrying capacity of the planet. And that something should be done at the local level. So, so great to be back here.
And my name's Evan Nix. I came to Bloomington in 2015 for school, and then have since been working as a research associate in the field of psychology, physiology, trauma, feelings of connectedness. That has made me think about these problems a lot, and I'm really interested in upstream solutions for well-being, and that brings me to sustainability in a lot of ways. I'm interested in placemaking and permaculture and urban green space, what types of plants and how we can plant them that make people feel welcome and like they have a place to sit underneath the tree instead of walk past it kind of mentality. And very interested in kind of the data analysis part of that, like which trees specifically because of the changing climate and things like that. Like I like the technical questions there. This is my first foray into local government, so really excited about understanding the workings of this minutia.
My name is John Eldon. I teach at IU environmental science, soil, forestry, things like that. So kind of interested in applied ecology, I guess broadly. Been on this commission for a couple of years. Goal is to get a little more integration between IU and the city. I've not been terribly successful at that, but that's a big ask, and there are forces to keep anyway. But that's my kind of interest in being here, is trying to kind of weave things together a little bit more where I can. So,
Matthew Austin, this is my second term. I support my sister in running an urban farm about 2 miles from here. We are focused on food waste issues and growing food in people's yards and increasing self-reliance and neighborhood resilience. So, Tara, I'd love to talk to you about a couple ideas. And then, as for trees, in city code, you're only allowed to put wood chips 3 feet from the trunk, and so best practices is actually out to the drip line. So that's something within the tree commission that I would like to address, because there could be a lot of trees dying because city code doesn't allow the correct tree management. Just as an aside. Thanks.
I'm Jamie Scholl, so this is kind of part of what I'm interested in too. So food sovereignty, permaculture design certificate back in 2006, I believe. So my experience has been with urban agriculture amendment to the city code, which I think that was like in 2000. I don't know, that and chicken modification. Helped, was one of the co-founders of the Food Policy Council and founder of the Bloomington Community Orchard Plant Selection Committee. I've been in and out of having businesses. I've done permaculture site visits. I've done tree guild plans, and looking at that as a part of resilience. A lot of my concerns with this had to do with, I aged myself a bit, but living through early in my life the Loma Prieta earthquake and seeing how beautiful it was, and that there was no food, no electricity, no way to open cans, and somebody could easily have gone out to pick fruit off a tree or to harvest it where there were gardens. So I see this as being integrated into environmental issues, whether it's water, climate issues, carbon sequestration, psychology issues as well. I have nutrition coach certification, so I have a few health and well-being coach certifications. So I'm interested coming at this from kind of the urban agriculture perspective and concerns with what I've worked on in the past and how we can move forward to make a more resilient community.
My name is Dave Maynor. I'm in project management. I joined this to connect ideas to resources. I don't think that climate change is going to be something we can avoid at this point. So I think the majority of sustainable efforts will end up being resilience and endurance instead of avoidance. So it'll be interesting to see what projects come down from the city to facilitate that endurance.
I'm Sean Mia. I'm the Assistant Director of Sustainability and the Staff Liaison for BCOS. If anyone is interested in what the city is doing to address climate change, I highly recommend that you go to the sustainability website and you take a look at our Climate Action Plan dashboard. It has just a wealth of information about all the projects that we're working on, and then also a lot of information about what individual residents can do to address climate change and to mitigate their greenhouse gas emissions, as well as resources for them. So I encourage you to check that out, as well as our sustainability website. It has all of our grant programs on there. So I encourage you to check it out.
Excellent. And I'm Justin Vassell. So my background is in physics. I got my PhD here at IU in 2021, rather. And I've been with the commission for a little while now, a little over over or under a year, something like that, under. What I do now is I work for the Air Force remotely. I work with their operational energy office. And so what we're trying to do is, find ways that the Air Force can use energy better when it comes to putting planes in the sky. So there's a big sustainability component to that. We do a lot of, looking into things like sustainable aviation fuels and like biomass type stuff and that sort of thing. And so it's something that's been on my mind from the professional side for a while, but also the economic and social aspects of sustainability, along with the environmental side and how all those things intersect, right? Like we were talking about, is always something that's really interested me because it's such a complex interdependence, and that makes it a very complex problem to solve when you're trying to solve problems in that space. Just hoping to do the little bit that we can to make things better here in Bloomington. So great. So welcome to all the new members.
Real quick.
Yeah,
I
please.
don't know that I quite figured out who all's new and who all's been here for a little while. Who all's new faces? Okay, cool.
It's my second meeting, I think.
Okay. Good deal.
I don't know if we
So
have.
you're a veteran here.
Not quite.
We don't have anybody in the Zoom meeting, right? I don't want to miss anyone online.
Yeah, Gunther said he might make it, but
Right.
it doesn't look like he is.
Okay, great. Okay, excellent. So we'll go down 2 slides here. There we go. Okay, so just to kind of get everyone acclimated who's new, and then also people who aren't new, just to give you an update on kind of where things stand on the org chart here and the positions that we have. We've got 14 commissioner positions. They're sort of divided by council appointments, mayoral appointments, and 3 ex officio appointments. And right now we have all of those seats filled, so that is great news.
Let me interrupt you real quick.
Please.
Dennis just resigned.
Sorry?
Dennis Vera just resigned.
Oh, is
she's-
that right?
Yeah, she's just sent an email saying she can no longer
Oh.
be a part. So, and I think Bloomington got their new sustainability
Yeah,
director.
I just
so-
wrote Jessica to see if the new director of IU Bloomington is going to take over.
Okay.
She wrote me,
Oh.
and she is going to make an introduction.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Sorry.
excellent.
Caitlin says she left in June.
And Caitlin's
She said that.
going as well. That's right.
She was planning for this to be her last meeting.
This one?
Yep, but I know it's also a busy time for her making the transition up to Indy.
So
So
we'll have 2 mayoral appointments available.
yeah. Great. So yeah, it changes fast sometimes. But this was as of this morning, I think this was right. As far as the executive committee and the commission goes, we've got 4 positions: chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. The secretary position is vacant at the moment, so a little bit later in this meeting, if anyone is interested in fulfilling that role, you can nominate yourself or somebody else, and hopefully we can fill that. Matt is our treasurer. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So one thing that we don't really have in kind of a centralized location is like a comprehensive onboarding, package of materials and a process that we normally follow to kind of get everybody up to speed when they jump onto the commission. I think it's something that's pretty sorely needed. So it's something that's very high on my list is, helping to compile something like that, that can be sort of a living document, get updated when it needs to be, and is sort of a primer or handbook or something like that to kind of get people up to speed as quickly as possible. But here's a basic attempt just to kind of do that here in just a couple of slides. So number 1 is just our purpose and our mission. So this can be found in the Bloomington Municipal Code. I've got the citation there at the bottom. Originally, I believe, came from the ordinance that Councilmember Rollo authored. And so, the mission here, is to promote sustainable socio-environmental economic well-being of Bloomington and all its inhabitants. So relatively short, straightforward sentence, but that is a big ask. And so we've got a pretty big lift ahead of us, but one that I think it sounds like, based on the enthusiasm that I heard around the table, that we're all up for. So we can go to the next slide, please. So I think it would be good for everybody at some point to either acquaint themselves or maybe reacquaint themselves with the governing documents that we have. So those are really the municipal code 2.12.100. Specifies what BCOS is and how it's configured. And I've summarized some of that here. So the sort of powers and duties that the commission has here. So sustainability initiatives is one of them. We'll be hearing some more about that later in this meeting. So those are projects that are kind of actively, being worked on by this commission. There's an annual public sustainability assessment report that the commission is meant to author each year. It's been a little while since we've done that, so that's something that we'll want to, get back on the radar. Advising city government on sustainability policy, that's a big one. So, if we have recommendations that we want to send off to the city council or to other aspects of the city administration, we want to be thinking about that and forwarding those along. Collaborating on sustainability issues, another big one, since sustainability is such a cross-cutting topic, and there are other organizations both within the Bloomington city government and outside of it that touch on individual aspects of that. Wherever there is opportunity for collaboration there, where we can sort of combine resources and get something that is bigger than the sum of its parts, we should be taking advantage of that. Monitoring Bloomington's current and future sustainability. Sean was just talking about the climate action dashboard, for example. That's one way that we can, sort of track what's going on in terms of Bloomington's sustainability. Procure funds for commission work. So if we need to go find money for something, that's something that we're empowered to do. And then self-governance. So we have a set of bylaws that we've adopted that set out kind of the administrative rules and regulations for the conduct of our business. And so we get a certain amount of latitude to, say how we're going to operate as a commission. Of course, while remaining in compliance with any laws or policies from the city. So that's kind of just a real quick whirlwind. What are we? What are the goals here? What do we do? So we'll go to the next slide here. And I just wanted to throw a couple things up on the screen that the commission has either been thinking about or started working on in the last, 6 to 9 months or so. And I just kind of pulled these off my head while referencing a few minutes. So there may be things on here that I've missed. And now that we've got an influx of new members, I imagine we will be adding things to this list and probably not taking too many things away. But you can see there's kind of a diversity of focus areas that we think about. So for example, ordinance about chickens and how many chickens you can keep is something that we've been thinking about. Ordinance recommendations about urban beekeeping. Those are all sort of, touching on sustainability topics, economic, environmental, that sort of thing. But then we have, internal sort of commission processes. So we've talked in the commission quite a bit over the last handful of months that the bylaws are in pretty desperate need of at least a revisit, if not, a rewrite. And so that's something that we want to look at. I just mentioned onboarding materials. It would be good to compile something like that. And then we've, got education type tasks up there and outreach type tasks. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on today, for example. So not to, call people out specifically on this slide. I put question marks where I think it makes sense here, just based on who's been talking about this stuff in the past. But, for anything that we're kind of thinking about, when we invite people to come to this commission to tell, to educate us on topics that we want to know more about, or we have ideas where we really want to, address a particular topic, it would be great to, number one, be able to keep track of it, and also, have somebody who's kind of the point person, or maybe a couple people who are the point people on that, who can help, drive those efforts forward. I think in recent times, there's been a lot of discussion near the end of meetings about ways in which the commission could operate more effectively. We have a lot of instances where a topic comes to us in this meeting, we learn about it, we have a little discussion, and then we don't really talk about it again for a while. There are some recurring things that come up, but there's a lot of things that just come before us once and then kind of get left on the wayside. So I've been putting a lot of thought into ways that we can try to kind of jumpstart some of these efforts and some of the work that you're going to hear about a little bit later this meeting. And so the way that I think might be the most effective way forward is on the next slide here. It's the concept of work sessions. So other commissions do this, the city council does this, and BCOS actually used to do this as well. I went back and looked at all of the minutes that I could find going back to 2005 and just separated them out into regular minutes or regular meetings and working session type meetings. And so you can see from 2018 to 2022-ish, these little blue bars here, there were really 2 BCOS meetings per month happening around those times. A regular meeting like this where business is, fundamental business is done, and then work sessions where you're really just trying to hammer out ideas. You're maybe coming up with new ideas, learning new things, brainstorming, maybe, editing and drafting language for a resolution. Yeah.
And tie that back with one of the topics on the previous slide, the Just Transition Working Group.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of dissolved because I believe the people that were orchestrating that are no longer with, right?
Yeah, yep, that's right. So we now have nobody from that group who's on the commission, but we do,
Can they
they
be
left some.
still contacted for transferring whatever they were doing?
Yep, and they've left some paper trails about the work that they've done. So, we could potentially pick up some of those projects. And yeah, I just grouped them on that last slide as just the just transition stuff because I know there's a lot of threads that they were following. Yep, absolutely. So this I think might be a good way to kind of break out of the way of doing things that we have at the moment. So the way that this would kind of work is that we'd have an additional a meeting each month for really getting into the weeds. Like I said, in these meetings, you wouldn't have any final decisions being made. You wouldn't be having votes or anything like that. The idea is that there might be a particular issue that's being discussed. Let's take when we had the beekeeper folks here and they were talking to us about bees. That might be a good sort of venue for a discussion like that, where folks that are really passionate about the issue can come there, discuss, throw ideas back and forth, and folks that are just happy to get the cliff notes at the end and then hear the final discussion. They don't have to make the trip out, right, for those meetings. So but in that case, you can't really take any votes or any decisions, at those meetings, if you don't quite get quorum. So they wouldn't have reports or public comment like we do here either. It would just be kind of a working time, and that attendance would be voluntary. Of course, there could be a quorum at those meetings, so we would have to give the advance notice, the public notice, as specified by the Indiana Open Doors Law, and the public would, be allowed to, of course, observe, and we would take minutes as well. So, if people have strong thoughts about this or ideas, we might have a little bit of time at the end of this meeting that we can touch base. Otherwise, I can just send out a survey with, what times would work well for people generally for like a working session. Would it just be, we have this meeting on the second Tuesday and then the working session 2 weeks later on Tuesday, same time sort of thing, depending on whether we can book a room or not. But that might be a good way to do it since people might be free Tuesdays at 6 p.m. But it would be good to collect some input on that in case, there's a time that works out better. So that's the plan, at least. I'm sorry. Yes.
Just a quick question of clarification.
Yeah.
The difference between work sessions and working groups? I don't know if it's specified.
Good question. So we've had this concept of a working group for a while. I don't believe it's in the bylaws, so there's no kind of strict formal definition as far as I know. But essentially, we've got, I think, 3 working groups right now that are kind of focused on a particular set of issues. So just transition was one example. I was working a strategic engagement and outreach working group. And Matt's spearheading the waste management working group. So there's sort of umbrellas that work will naturally fall into. I think we can rethink how we do that. The idea of a working group might be a little bit too regimented if we want to cover this kind of vast array of different topics. It may be that if it doesn't seem like it fits well into a pre-existing working group, then you have to create a new working group for it, which is sort of additional overhead. Or you just say, well, maybe I should do something else instead that does align with one of those groups. I think it would be perfectly, reasonable and sensible to just have initiatives or something, right? And initiatives might be longer term kind of projects that involve, numerous things, like waste management, for example, might be a kind of overarching initiative. But an initiative might also be a one-off project that lasts for 3 months and then it's done, right? So it
kind of seems to go session, working group, initiative, if it's really implemented, working group ongoing, session maybe just once or twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the working groups, at least the way I envision them, are sort of meant to be, people bring some ideas forward, like, hey, we want to talk about this, we want to, we've got something we want to get out of it. Maybe we want to draft a resolution, right? We just want to state the opinion of this commission, right? Or maybe we want to recommend, language for an ordinance for the council or something like that. Great, let's pick a working session, put that thing on the agenda, and spend an hour and a half really getting into the weeds and hammering that thing out. And if individual working groups or people that are working on a common project, if they want to get together in between those meetings in a small group that does not have a chance to make quorum, they can meet outside of those. Outside of those meetings as well.
Just a clarification on working groups.
Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Larry Allen. I'm the city attorney. To the extent that the working groups would be a committee where 2 or more of this commission were gathering, you still would have to comply with the open door law, so you'd still have to do the notice regardless of whether there's a quorum of the whole. So just keep that in mind as you do those working groups. Think about the notice and work with your staff liaison just to post it and where you're going to meet and things like that.
Sure.
You don't have to meet in City Hall, just to be really clear.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to meet in City Hall. It just has to be a place that's accessible to the public.
Yeah.
So if you want to meet at a restaurant and share a drink or whatever while you talk things out, as long as it's properly noticed and that location is available to the public and we can post that, you are fine. You can totally do that. We'll work with you on that. Just talk to us about the formation of those and we'll try to work with you on getting those set up.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, appreciate that.
A library has.
Library, yep. Mm-hmm.
So if I prefer it's not here, because if it's here, then I would have to be here to open the room for you.
Sure, yeah, fair
I have
enough.
enough evening meetings, so you could
Yep.
have it elsewhere. I would appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then making sure the place is like wheelchair accessible, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Great. Yeah. So that's the thought there. And if we have some time at the end, maybe we can discuss a little bit further, get people's thoughts on that. Okay. So I've got one more slide. This is something that I wanted to bring to the commission's attention. It's a fairly new development within the last couple days. But we, for the last several years, have had a shared Google folder that's, I think, been hosted by ES&D, if I'm not mistaken, but hosted somewhere around the city where all of BCOS documents and things have gone to live. And we've done a lot of work out of there, just note-taking and planning and things like that. Apparently it turns out that we were not supposed to have access to that folder. And so we no longer have access to that folder. I think there are IT security concerns associated with that, which is, the rationale for, revoking that access. But there's, this is something I think we should discuss because at least in the immediate term, it impacts us negatively in a couple different ways. Number one is there's a lot of institutional knowledge and institutional memory on that drive, and not being able to easily access, those documents makes it a lot harder for us to, continue working on projects that are sort of in the works already, or for new members to kind of get up to speed on what the commission's been up to lately. I know when I first joined, going through those documents and getting a sense for what has been done over the last several years was super helpful in getting up to speed. So that's number one. And then number two is, we don't really have a good way to track progress on initiatives in a shared space. So obviously when we have meetings and things like this, we produce minutes, memoranda, agendas, those sort of, documents.
What do the other commissions do for their repositories?
Yeah, let's circle back to that in just a second. We generate official documentation. It goes up onto the city's, onboard servers and things like that. But we've also got a lot of like spreadsheets where we just keep track of organizations that we're reaching out to, or all sorts of things where we're just kind of keeping track of incremental developments as they happen. So not having a shared space where we can easily pass those files back and forth to keep everyone up to speed is definitely going to slow things down. So I think as an executive committee, Andrew and Matt and myself will try to reach out, have discussions, with folks from the city to see if there's some sort of solution that we can work towards, in the longer term. But pending that, I wanted to open it up for discussion and questions from the group.
I just have a clarifying question. Is it that the city uses Google for its document storage and we no longer have access to it, or that drive has been deleted?
It has not been deleted. The drive still exists and all the files are still safe. We as commissioners just no longer have access.
So it's like a city managed?
That's right.
Got it, okay.
Can I
Yes.
frame a little bit, and it might help inform your discussion, at least initially? Yeah, so other boards and commissions, the staff liaisons manage all the files and the document life of the boards and commissions, but what is unique about VCOS is that you are the largest commission in the city. You have strength in numbers so that you can go execute on these many numerous projects across the community. So I think that means that your document needs are a little different than some of the other commissions. That said, there is a security situation where the IT policy doesn't allow users outside of the city to be accessing our drive. And I just want to be clear that we don't want to keep access. We don't want to prevent you from accessing your files. We can copy the drive and share it with you anytime. But it's just we need to meet those security requirements. So happy to help facilitate some kind of solution.
Jamie.
I'm curious because I've had security clearance before and have been trained in that a few years ago now. But is it possible that we could use something like Trello for project management?
I think you guys could self-determine
Can
your
we?
solution.
Okay.
It's just our city resources are not available to volunteers. They're just for staff. So I think you could definitely.
So is there any,
But I was thinking,
thinking PII or things like that that's sensitive in nature. If we probably need to set up some guidelines as well to know what can and cannot be placed in unsecured location.
I'd be very wary of having any member of this commission have PII as a file. So that should be probably stored through your staff liaison to the extent possible. Because we also have legal obligations we have to.
Sorry, what's PII?
Personally identifiable
Oh, yeah, sorry,
information.
thanks.
So that, just one thing. The only thing other I would caution against, which is absolutely correct, Jane's right, in terms of the Trello, is just anything that you're working on simultaneously as a board risks violation of open door law. So just be aware of that. Just be really conscious of that. So any software or thing where you can go in there and be talking kind of simultaneously, essentially you're having a virtual meeting without declaring the meeting and making a notice. So that we're just really, that's one thing just to be cautious of. There's ways around that. There's certainly, you just, as long as you're staggering how you're working on documents and like commenting on them and things like that, there's ways around it. But again, that's one of those things. We would just want to work with you on that, whatever solution you find, just to make sure you're in compliance with open door law and not violating any part of that.
I have a related question. Are any documents that we produce subject to public information? So
everything you produce as a commission, as a functionary of the city, is subject to two things. It's subject to public records request, and then it's also subject to retention. So once you create a document, we are obligated by law to retain that document. And so that's again one of those part of the security concerns about our drives is when people own folders and can move things around and things get deleted. We may be accidentally violating the law, and we don't want to do that. We do have a mechanism where we try to go back through our archives, but that's extremely burdensome. So we're just trying to be really uniform with how we do this. We already, as a city, you might imagine, we already really struggle with our document retention. It's we create so many documents at one time, it's really tough. So it's something we're just paying attention to, trying to make as uniform as possible so that we're not, again, accidentally violating the law.
So to be clear, if we create something, it has to go into the repository of the city, but then we don't have access to it after that.
Well, you could.
A copy of it has to go.
Yeah.
It has to be available to the city.
Could we just create our own Google Drive folder, make sure you have access to it, and then as long as we don't go through our storage limits, we're fine. And if we do end up going through our storage limits, then I don't know, I guess we gotta figure out the funding pieces you put up here.
You might need to review the city's IT policy because like free Google Drive folders are often violate information sharing.
Well, I mean, I would think we'd want it to be public.
No, I'm sorry, like not like the city probably has like Google Workspaces. So they have like a city account, one that's just like set up by a commissioner. It's a free Google account.
Right.
The terms of service often, I've gone through this in my professional life, the terms of service often violate government laws about data sharing because of some of the language in their terms of service says that they own anything that you put in there. And that's not necessarily legal.
No, it doesn't have to be Google. Yeah, I mean, could be anything. As long as it sounds like we got to find something that's public, and we got to find something that doesn't have anything to do with the city, more or less.
And ultimately, we just need to receive copies of everything that we can, upload and archive.
Yep. We have to put a procedure into place to make sure that we're transferring, those documents over.
The simplest way about this may just be we can file share. So individual file share, my understanding from Rip Deeds is that that's permissible. It's really the folder ownership and sharing of the editing of the folder. So if there are particular files that we need to share with the commission, I think we can do that. Again, all the caveats about simultaneously working on a particular document and all that stuff notwithstanding, but I think we can share those files with you. So they're not gone by any stretch of the imagination. We just need to find a different way for you to have access to them.
Okay.
So when we do get another system set up, you could share what we used to have, and we could put it into it.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Or whatever. If you set up your own, again, I'm a little bit worried about document retention because you're creating official documents, and we really do need to pay attention to that. But otherwise, in terms of your files, we just need to figure out a way that we can keep copies of them, official records. They're subject to open door law or public records request, and then also that you have access that you can, or the commission's still functioning and has all its.
Okay.
Great. Well, we'll work on this, in between this meeting and next, and hopefully get something new in place. But I wanted to make sure everyone was aware so that you don't go to try to find something in the Google Drive and you're like, where to go?
That is a working session topic I am not interested in.
There you go. that one probably wouldn't need a whole working session, I don't think. Great. Is there any more discussion on this before we move on to our next agenda item? Perfect. Okay, great. Our next item is the update from Just Transition Working Group, but Caitlin is not here, and I don't think she's dialed in to Zoom. So we'll move on to Waste Management Working Group. Matt, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, real quick. The nonprofit that my sister runs, they have a pilot for Orange County. They're working at a festival to deal with food waste. They have the FFA students that are going to be trained in bokashi composting. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's anaerobic fermentation of food waste. It's 5-gallon buckets. And within a week of it fermenting, it produces a liquid fertilizer, and after 2 weeks, it becomes a soil amendment that you can directly bury into garden beds. And 2.5 months later, it will be soil. So we're hoping to do the same thing with a pilot with some of Lotus or something smaller than that. And later on, hopefully, Tom McGlasson will be here. He is the executive director of the Waste Reduction District, and they're interested in something similar in collaboration potentially with BCause with the neighborhood grants that we have. So we're working on that, and then as an update with the grant that Garden Quest got from BCause with the TerraCycle, they have filled up multiple containers so far. The 10 neighbors have gotten very educated, and it turns out that the Waste Reduction District actually has 2 of those containers at their South Walnut facility, and there was a press release that they did about those two containers. So my sister, the director of Garden Quest, she hit up Carol Kugler with the HT as well as others to publicize that and to get more people to be knowledgeable about the neighborhood grants that are available through BCause. So hopefully the HT and Carol Kugler will pick that up and help publicize what BCause is doing as well as the Waste Reduction District. So we will see about that.
Awesome. And just for context, BCause has access to certain funds through ESD. One is a working group grant, so the working groups can apply for grant money for a particular project. And then there's a sustainable neighborhood grant, is that what it's called? Yeah, and that's the one that Matt was just referring to, where for neighborhood sustainability projects, there's a pot of money available that BCause will review the applications and make decisions on that. So.
Sean, have we had, maybe it's coming up later, have we had applicants to the Sustainable Neighborhood Grant?
We've had some applicants, but it's only for a single household, so it
Doesn't qualify.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Okay, report from council.
I don't have much to report. We're just back from our recess. But the last week of August, we have our budget meetings for the city, and that's, I think, a good opportunity for people to learn about what city does, because departments do presentations over a series of evenings. And one consideration that the city is going to be making soon is whether to proceed with annexation, whether to physically expand the boundaries of the city. This is something that's been litigated now for several years. The county's been opposed to it, and the city would like to expand. There are arguments on both sides. I'm not going to do an exposition on that, but suffice to say, I think the council is going to be making some declaration about it, and the administration ultimately will decide whether to proceed with more litigation. So to appeal the decision that was just made last week, which was not in favor of the city expanding. But could I take another moment? Because there's something I've wanted to bring up. Maybe I brought it up in the past. And it's a consideration for the commission, I think. And it might take the form of a resolution. So I mentioned a little while ago, when I was thinking about sustainability back in 2003 and 4, when I joined the city council and why a commission was necessary, it became apparent that already climate change was problematic. There were other planetary limits that we are exceeding. And so it made sense for governments on all levels to pay mind to that. But I think that we might think about as a commission, and I'd like to maybe discuss this at some point when we have time at a future meeting, and that is, what is at the heart of sustainability? So this goes to first principle considerations. Back in the day, when I was thinking about sustainability and presenting it to people, it's that common diagram that we all know, which is the environment, economy, and equity domains, and whether they're to optimize them, whether they're all functioning with equal consideration. So as not to jeopardize, of course, future thriving, future well-being of people. And that's one way of looking at it, but I think it's insufficient. because it doesn't put limits on the entire activity of human processes. And we know there are limits. We know there's a carbon limit to the atmosphere, for instance. There are other limits that we're exceeding. And those things need to be thought of as, for instance, climate change needs to be thought of as symptomatic of something bigger. That is humanity's impact overall, writ large. So I think that we could have a discussion at some point about, it's not just about lowering impacts, but it's about rethinking the way in which human beings process, especially economics. If economics is defined by throughput of energy and materials, there must be a limit on the expansion of the economy. So instead of thinking of these three domains and their overlap, we should think of a nested model where the environment is the ultimate limits, the biosphere, and within that is the social domain, and within that is the economy, which is a subset of what we do socially. And that's sort of a right way of thinking about it, I think, and it needs to be really implemented if we're going to come to terms with overshoot, which I think we're experiencing, not just in terms of climate, but many things. So if that's of interest to the commission, I'd love to maybe make a little presentation on it to get a discussion going and see how people feel about this discussion and whether the commission would like to weigh in on that, you know, pro or con, and have a resolution or declaration to that effect. So if you want to talk to me about it in the meantime, reach out. Thanks, Justin.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of reports from commissioners, and we'll move on to discussion of topics not the subject of resolutions. So we'll start with urban agriculture and food security from Jamie. And I think we've got your slide deck up here. Is that?
Great. Awesome. Just, I'd say it was actually kind of nice to have an extra month to work on this. I don't know if you were able to pull up the spreadsheet, the Google Sheet. Okay, so as I had alluded to earlier, working on urban ag amendment, that seemed like a really huge victory. At the time, it was the first one in the state. So, you know, it was setting a precedent that other cities in the state had followed. Since then, though, I've realized that the HOAs in particular, and maybe some neighborhood associations, do not allow for food growing and such. So it kept bothering me after I had a client actually sell their home in an HOA and move to outside into the city, but not everyone can do that. And so much of the city that were once owned homes are now rentals. So therefore, how many people can actually grow their own food, grow their food to sell it, so there's an local economic incentive. What is that? So it seemed like a big win at the time, but that win is dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. So I talked to someone in hand, and then reached out to the county as well as a title company that recommended to me, and finally decided to, with the city's or the county's help, get onto the GIS site and spent about 4 hours looking at how many HOAs or neighborhoods we have. And then I set up the spreadsheet, and these are not, you know, these are the things that would be most supportive of, you know, that's local food sovereignty and sustainability and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we could do like the home scale bokashi. So these are, this is all I like I said, if you scroll down, I was shocked to see how many we actually have. So therefore, anything that we do at the council level how much impact would it have, because anything that they have there will supersede what is done at the council level. I'd love to know how many dwellings are in each. This would be great for students to work on, to just populate this from the GIS side.
Sorry, so HOA would have limitations potentially on what could be grown, et cetera. When you say neighborhood, does that just mean like is that an official?
Yes, there are neighborhood associations. It's on the
Okay, so
website.
HOA versus neighborhood association, not just
Yeah,
like a.
homeowners associations, like the large development that was just approved by city council is like 11,000 units that, according to the sustainability action plan, was placed in a food desert. Now, I tried to getting a hold of folks at the federal level, but hadn't gotten a reply yet to see if they had any kind of updated information, because I was having some trouble with their site, and it was a number of years old now. So therefore, if an HOA does not really want food growing in the front yards, and it's meant for retaining an economic value for the property, which we all want, but there's ways to grow food and look at agriculture, whether it's espaliered orchards or different things, edible landscaping, that we need to be aware of to know really how sustainable are we, if we're looking at it, as David said, in a different way. So one of the ways I look at it is, can we, water, food, and shelter, the very basic human needs. So if we can't take care of, as a community, our own food needs, how vulnerable are we to any kind of shocks, which we started to see that some with COVID. Anyway, as I dove into that and I started looking at this, it was, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name in hand, but she gave me the idea. It was kind of her suggestion of let's looking at this in a sequential way, and that would be, let's make sure that the policy is changed so the municipal code is in alignment with sustainability goals, because we don't have cohesiveness in these different areas. So that would be the first one. Then the second would be create a suggested HOA covenants and restrictions documents for developers to use should they opt to create an HOA. And a lot of our people who live in HOAs do not like them, but that is what is set up, and those are the homes that can be purchased. Solution 3, make public the manner in which an existing neighborhood can make changes to the existing covenants and restrictions. So when they're in an HOA, because many times neighborhood associations functioning differently than an HOA already know how to do that. But I have seen this asked on social media site next door, and there's a lot of people that have problems with their HOA. So that's something that if we knew how to do, then maybe more would do that. The next solution 4 would create an updated NOV is notice of violation for hand to use that would include more specific information that would be supportive of sustainability action plan goals. That may be something that to coordinate with the Environmental Commission, because some of these items fall also into what they're, in charge of. And then someone had mentioned to me, it's like, I'm on Commission for Sustainability. Oh, have you looked at this area? Do you know this that's going on? So I drove to RCA Park, and there's a lot of folks there that could use more food security, and I'm thinking food sovereignty. And there's homeless that are living in some of the areas. I didn't see them, but I was told that they live in the forested areas around there. In one of the documents, I'm sorry, I don't remember which one at the right now, but there was mention of an urban farm. So it would function differently than community garden plots, which really are not large enough for a household to support itself through the winter. That's why, like, the German and British allotments are so much larger, and they're handed down from generation to generation until they're given out. But when you have an urban farm, then there would be more cooperation within the city, and we're going to be able to do something larger in regards to, especially with protein sources. Because a lot of times people will grow their vegetables and maybe their fruits, but not be able to, because we also have the community orchard, but not be able to grow some of the other things that they would need. Let's see. I know I'm probably going over in time, so I'm sorry. And each one goes into details as you go through the slides. I think those are sent out. The NOV, this one was for Joe Davis.
Notice of
I'm sorry,
violation.
the
for
notice
those
of
that don't know.
violation. Yeah, I mentioned that. They look like this. Okay, I don't know if that's up there, but this is one. This is the way the form looks. I wasn't sure if we had a whiteboard, but I'm like, okay, I've sketched this out a few times. One of the problems with the notice of violation is that having gone to these meetings, the one that this one stated and some of the plants that I sold and actually even planted some of them would fall under the edible landscaping part or the urban farm part. And those were noted in there and photos were taken by a compliance officer and then sent up and were judged. Although it's comfrey, Bocking 17, which is not going to be spreading, it's root divisions only, and that's a permaculture thing. That's very typical. And I sell these, of course, and also garden sorrel, which is a perennial. So, you know, when something says, please mow, those are things that are not going to be mowable. But if we're going to also extrapolate out and have beehives, which we talked about in the last meeting, then we're going to have bee habitat that is not going to be the 8 inches or below. So when a resident gets an NOV and does not know if it just says please mow or poison ivy, then where is that? So to have a diagram of a house, I'd started sketching something out, had a background, first job was in visual communication design. So I'm like, okay, I could sketch this out, have a house in the middle, and then around it and have the compliance officers circle where it is that they saw that. That is in the goldenrod.
Kind of like when you rent a vehicle
Right.
and you put where all the dents are.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then
They
on
don't have
the
photos
No.
like included?
well, it is in the packet that then gets, you know, heard. But you know, I looked at the photos. I couldn't tell. And when they put photos of things that I planted that should be allowable, then that is a problem.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if the compliance officers understand what plants are what, if they're going to be listing things that should not be. So perhaps on the back of the form would then be what the plant is and just check it off. And then say on there, not just do ASAP, but because of people traveling or illness or something like that, then have a specific date and time for a revisit. And if that is not the case, then have, you know, who they should contact to set up a new inspection. That seems like it would get rid of a lot of animosity and create more knowledge and clarity within the community. And given that I planted these plants and they're considered by certain people in the city as not being, you know, compliant when they are, that to me seems like it would be also very much in alignment with, you know, HOA and such, where maybe we need to have plant lists and things like that that are already planned out that people can then just utilize.
And maybe having them use the plant identification apps.
That's if they have a phone. I you know, that's true. That could be, but I don't want to make assumptions for everyone in our community.
You mean the compliance officers?
Yeah.
Oh, the compliance officers. Yeah.
So
I mean, I've set up, you know, Excel spreadsheets with what the plant is, the taxonomy, you know, the different things, and then the photo of
So
the
the
plant.
exceptions that are in the code that people can have, what is it, backyard wildlife habitat sort of designation to be exempt from the weed ordinance? Is that still in
Yeah,
place?
so that's where it seems like there's lack of continuity between the different departments. and what we're trying to do with sustainability action plan goals, as well as what, you know,
The code says.
I'm sorry?
What the code says.
What the code says. So if we start with the code, make sure that the code is in alignment and supportive of what the goals are, then we could move on to create these suggested HOA covenants to ensure that any new developments that are coming in would be in alignment. We wouldn't have to worry about that. The third would be making it available and the knowledge available for how existing HOAs and neighborhoods would be able to transition that and adopt those things, and then could create the NOV, notice of violation document. That seems like it's important. And then that last solution of, you know, adding an urban farm to an area that, you know, we're going to be having 11,000 units, and I've not yet done the calculation to see how far away, since Fresh Time, let's see, it's not Fresh Time, Lucky's is no longer in that location, so we have food access issues. So it seems that that is a really good location, but I'm also concerned with the area across 37 that feels forgotten by the city, in that, you know, on the other side of that, because we have a mobile home park that people are being forced out now, and they don't know where they're going to go. So there are some issues that are going on that I think we might be able to have a hand in helping them as well as the entire community with these.
And the HO, Rick, kind of following with the newer term, food apartheid.
Yeah.
Food desert sounds accidental. Food apartheid is this type of redlining to prohibit food production in your locality.
And I like to look at the food sovereignty to ensure people have that ability to care for themselves and care for their neighbors in the neighborhoods. And that's where these other things that we're interested in would be helpful.
And then resilience for the emergencies.
Right, and agriculture being beyond just the annuals, but looking at also the trees. Do we have spindle orchards? Do we have, you know, these other things, native plants that we know can be relied upon? Are we looking those many years out until, you know, are we just cutting down black walnut trees and oak trees that could, you know, are a wild food source? Or are we trying to preserve these and also taking into consideration the non-human beings that reside here as well? You know, the squirrels and the deer, and we have a deer issue, that's a whole different issue. However, you know, to consider the non-human beings and with which we share the environment.
Excellent. All right, great. Well, we should probably move on to be able to fit the rest of the stuff in, but really appreciate you going through that. And that's great.
I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I've been working in this area since 2007.
Yeah, no, this is great. Really appreciate you sharing that. Next up, we have Matt, neighborhood grant collaboration opportunities. Did you want to speak to that, or?
I do not see Tom here, so we will just push that to next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. In that case, that brings us to BCOS social media ideas with Zero. You had some ideas.
Yeah, it was just, you know, once I got on the commission, I'm like, okay, add that to my profile on the LinkedIn or whatever. And there wasn't any, you know, commission stuff popping up. It's the usual insignia next to when you enter something like that. And so I thought about looking around on the social media, the Facebook. I saw there was an Instagram, but nothing really being posted. And I don't think there's anything specifically Commission on Sustainability on Facebook. And like I said, years ago, I think it was when George Huntington was, I think, head of the commission, we did these video PSAs that we put on CATS Channel 7, my nonprofit, our Eco Media Center. Did that for various groups in the region, you know, made a little video PSA about whatever the thing was, and then put that on the radio and stuff. And what they were doing at the time was a call out for ideas from the public. So it was especially a real public input seeking thing. And so, I mean, I don't know if there was any more of an internal process of how that was authorized or anything, but
seems to me that in this day and age, to not have really anything going out into the social media, it's not going to trickle into consciousness of the general. I mean, there's specialized people particularly interested, they're going to be hip and tuned in, but it seems like, that's part of the issue of the cul-de-sacing of sustainability issues, is that it just becomes this kind of specialized community, and that the broader community doesn't see it as relevant, or that they have any role or part in it. So I think it would be good that if we did, I don't know if it had to be like a working group to come up with some posts, to place in these various outlets, and like get a presence on something like LinkedIn as well.
Mhm.
Not everywhere, but the major ones. So that's just yeah.
I shared about what I was looking for because I first put on the Nextdoor app. I know the city also places, and that's how I see what's going on with the city. It's on Nextdoor, and it's only for neighborhoods, so you can bring it down. And whenever I'd ask for how many HOAs are there in the city, thinking, hide mine, because so much of Facebook, the algorithms get messed up, and I know that this is just local, so you can designate, where that is going. So that's something to consider, because I had a lot of people placing opinions and thoughts on whenever I was looking for HOA information.
Is social media subject to the same retention laws as other documents produced by the commission?
So we fall under some of our extant policies, and
Yeah.
so, do you want to jump in, or?
Yeah, we could just, our IT has a social media policy, so it would be something that would be set up through your city liaison potentially, so the control again would maintain with the city as opposed to independent ones, but that's something I'm sure Sean can look into. We would have to work with our IT department to establish which ones.
And I think again, when I think about listening to you, Zero, and thinking again about the commission's broad work that it's doing across the community, and the goal, which is to have better communications and to have an increased audience to prevent shouting into a cup, or I don't know, whatever analogy you want to use. That's not the right one, but I think there will have to be a way to meet the city's guidelines and then also meet your needs as a commission. So the city, again, doesn't allow its volunteers to post on its behalf, and it doesn't allow modification of its branding. But I think that if we noodle this from a few different angles, there has to be a way to have an active social media presence that meets the requirements of the city. And it might be tagging, or I'm the last person you should ask.
That's where I was going. You make your own post, you tag, and the liaison can then post it on the city's.
Oh
social
yeah,
media.
like you would post on your Garden Quest page and tag the city. I mean, I think that is a really
and then the city, then Sean can decide to post it on the city, on the because.
Yeah, I do want to bring in the issue of capacity. So just thinking about your posts and the number and what your goal is for those posts. If it's an event that BCOS is hosting, or maybe you're wanting to send out a survey or something to the community, just want to make those posts really meaningful and productive. I'm just thinking about staff capacity, that we don't have the staff capacity to post something every day, or probably not even once a week. So just keeping that in mind.
Well,
like a working group issue.
What as individuals, because whenever there was some defensiveness that was shown in the posts where I was asking for information, because I told them, I want to be transparent. This is transparency. So what as an individual, and now it's on Nextdoor, I don't share things like that on Facebook.
Defensiveness on our part
No.
Oh, okay,
That was
this
was in, so I made a post and someone in the county was not thrilled. Don't because I didn't know if some HOAs or neighborhood associations might cross outside of half be in the city limits and half be outside of the city limits. That's, was a possibility I wasn't sure about. So I made it a broad thing that was shared. And I said, whatever is I discover, of course, I'm serving the public. So I'd want to ensure that they know what I'm discovering. So as I haven't shared anything because, I'm still working on that and not sure how the BCAS felt about it. But when I share something, are there guidelines? I know I've been a part of teams that have set up guidelines for use, whether, it was a student organization at the university or, just in general for other staff members. So I don't know if the city has something,
yeah.
social media guidelines already.
We have social media and content guidelines, and I think this is where it would be helpful to talk to. I really do think you almost need a working group or exec on this for a while first, because there are just multiple layers. But yeah, so then the content guidelines kind of talk about not just tone, but like how we're posting and strategizing about communications as an organization. Obviously, BCAS is part of this organization, but BCAS has its own interests and goals. And so it's really how are those nested together and I would keep my eyes on the prize of getting the outcomes that serve everybody, because I think we can do it. I just don't know what they are in this meeting.
Do you know if the city, not necessarily like the raw data, but could share analytics about their own, their social media? Because I'm thinking about algorithms will not push if you're posting once a week, nobody's going to see it unless they seek it out. So I'm thinking also about like effort to impact. We don't have to answer that question now, but that might be something to think about is like, how much engagement are they getting and like what's the sort of like payoff per post for the effort, and think about if we have to go through like rounds of approval, is that gonna, if we're doing that once a month, going to be any different than what we're doing now?
Again, if you post and tag, then you're outside of the system.
Right, yeah.
Kind of do it.
And you should also be able to schedule, correct me if I'm wrong, you should be able to schedule your posts. You could have all your posts ready for the meeting.
I'm talking about
these are what we
official,
want.
like going through the official process of
Right.
like having the city post for us may prove to be a lot of work for very little reward, because nobody's going to see it because of the way most of the algorithms function now. You have to be posting multiple times a day in order to be pushing outside of your followers, or even to get to your followers sometimes.
So I think once we know maybe from the city side of things what they would need in terms of, we give them a post and they, we've got certain accounts that we want it to go to. Once we kind of know what that looks like, then internally here at BCAS, we can set up our own, procedure so that when we are handing off a post, it's, probably going to meet the same guidelines that the city's going to have, right, for their social media posts. It just reduce the burden as much as possible for the review period.
But does it mean, should some things be through the city and some things just be, hey, this is what this working group is doing that we want to keep, kind of open and, kind of the open door. We know you weren't able to come to the meeting, but we would like to let you know that this is what we discussed. So, and maybe it could be linked to a survey of what you all think about this. And so that's where then, because I would be mostly on Nextdoor thinking about these things, not on Instagram and Facebook, which you can link and schedule posts. So mine is more about supporting like the open door of this is what the transparency, because I think based upon what's going on now, that transparency is going to be really important to keep and regain the public trust.
Yes, re-engage.
Exactly. And BCAS has had really awesome things we've done in the past. Not that I was a member in the past, but I know it was like a very lucrative thing to be sitting here in one of these seats, and I'd like to have that again. And I think if this is something we can support in that transparency, then, maybe we're just sharing. That's where the guidelines would come in of you can share this or make the post 2-3 sentences and then a survey or something like that, because it's not necessarily engagement so much, because again, I don't need somebody to hit a like button or comment on something that we put out, but I see what the city is putting out, which is where I see it on Nextdoor, and I don't know the communications director at the city, and he will just post it. Here's the mayor talking about these things, and there's a video.
And that, you were finding that helpful?
That's very
for it,
helpful.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
the current mayor is posting a lot on Instagram, which I think is nice. But then I also think about, I'm sorry, I'm smarter early in the morning.
Yeah, you've had a long day.
The Newtown, like, what's going on page, and then Reddit, and what's the shared resources group? I can't think of the name of it, but there are a couple different places where there's just real collective information sharing that honestly, like, you could post links to whatever you want there. I think, and there's a lot of public consuming information there, and the city wouldn't be in your way.
So maybe between now and the next meeting, we can have some, discussions about what kind of the logistics of that might start to look like, and then, bring back an update for next meeting.
Yeah,
and
send us out the links to the guidelines and everything.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and this doesn't add anything else to Sean's plate, or, we just tag them if it's appropriate in that social media site.
Yeah, we can come up with a game plan. Okay, great. So I want to make sure Sean gets time to go over her report, and that is the next item. So take it away, Sean.
We don't have any resolutions.
We don't have any resolutions. Nope.
All right. Okay, well, I just wanted to share a project that was just completed Sunday before last, if I can get this to open. So we completed our urban heat island mapping with NOAA, and we were featured on WTHR. So I just wanted to share this with you, and you can get a sense for what it's about. You gotta watch an ad.
And then in addition to that, I think that the teams that have been put together, because they've never met each other, there's going to be some interesting reality TV like Social Dynamic.
Wow.
Sorry about that.
That's not what I meant today. It was hot. It was hot all across central Indiana, including Bloomington. That means it was the perfect day to study the summertime urban heat island effect around the city.
Yeah, do a little bit at a time. Perfect.
You may have seen vehicles driving around Bloomington with temperature and air quality sensors. Handpicked and funded by NOAA, Indiana University and the city of Bloomington conducted a heat mapping campaign to collect temperatures across town to send to a company called Kappa to then create a high-resolution map.
Volunteers are placing heat sensors and air quality sensors on their cars, and they're going to be driving around predetermined routes around the city. They're going to be collecting heat data as well as air quality data. And this will help us to understand how heat is distributed across our city. We'll see that temperature difference between the little microclimates within Bloomington. They can be up to 20 degrees hotter than rural areas. And that's because concrete and asphalt, they absorb heat and then release that into the surrounding air.
The official temperature for Bloomington is recorded right over here at the Monroe County Airport here on the west side of town. But that temperature may not be that reflective of how hot it actually feels where you are in your day-to-day as you go throughout Bloomington. For example, it's going to be a lot cooler over here by IU's Red Clock compared to standing out here in the parking lot next to IU Memorial Stadium.
If we understand which areas are hottest, then we can design different heat mitigation strategies, such as albedo strategies where we're looking at cool roofs or cool pavings, or green infrastructure strategies where we're increasing green space, such as more trees or grass within our communities in order to help with that decrease those extreme heat exposures.
They hope to locate the hot spots so that eventually they can build things to keep the city cooler.
And all that information from today is being processed and should be available to the public later in September.
Nice.
Thank you. So I just wanted to here's a whole article about it if you want to see it.
What makes it possible is unmatched connectivity.
There's that. And so I wanted to share this with the commission because as you're thinking of green infrastructure, urban gardens, it'd be great to focus on those hotspots in our city and trying to pull those.
And so there is the map is completed?
And no, it'll be completed at the end of September. And I'll share that with the commission.
No spoilers.
But we could probably tell you about where some of the bad places are.
The turf at the Switchyard Park Playground.
Oh, I bet.
One of those dangerous places in summer.
And then just to let you know about the Mother Hubbard's Cupboard, they're having their annual garden gala. It will be gala on August 23rd. So tickets are available at their website. They say to join us in our beautiful open harvest community garden for an evening of food and drink, music, and a raffle, all to raise money to support the Hub's mission. Mother Hubbard's Cupboard works to increase access to healthy food in ways that cultivate dignity, agency, and community. So Jane and I will be there.
The Hub rules.
Yes.
It's a ticketed event, but if you have the ability to join, it would be great to have members celebrate there.
And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. Okay, our next item on the agenda is member announcements. This is meant to just be if anyone who didn't get a chance to update the commission and they have something that, is going to be of interest to the commission, you can, John, go ahead.
I think I said this the last time we met, but we're like 8 months into 2024, and I don't think I've heard a single proposal about how to spend the money that Sean has secured for us.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't understand what we're supposed to be doing in this commission. Big picture definitions, and I don't know. Maybe that's what we do, and I misunderstood that. Sean got us a lot of resources, and we cannot figure out how to even use them, and we're not even discussing how to use them, and it's a little frustrating. So, thanks for getting them.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll let us use them again next year, because I think at this point we have like 1 month maybe to get things started, given it takes 2 or 3 months to get things approved.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. And does the money ends up kind of going away if it's not used within a time period, right?
Correct. If we have a grant agreement in place, I can encumber the funds. So it's not that we have to use the funding and the project has to be completed by the end of the year, but we at least have to have that grant agreement in place to encumber for next year.
Yeah, it's like we're not even. I don't even hear project. It's like we are so far away from using money that it's like.
It would be good to share with the new members. You have $10,000.
Oh, I'm sorry.
$10,000.
Okay.
And so it'd be good to share with the new members the procedures that the working groups go about to request funding.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole procedure. And I don't remember, but I think you had approved where you only have to read the grant proposal at one meeting, and you can vote on it at that meeting. You don't have to have 2 meetings.
Right.
So.
Wait, so where is the information?
It's in the BCOS folders. I'll send that out.
It's in my Google Drive.
Yeah.
I have.
Great.
Yep.
So everyone can read that, between now and the next meeting. If you have any good ideas for where the money could go, bring them with. Yeah.
And that's for the calendar year. Within the calendar year.
Yeah, it's not fiscal year, right? It's calendar.
Fiscal year is the calendar year.
So what was the month you were referring to?
Oh, it takes a while to propose a grant and get it together, and so working backwards from the end of the year, we don't have a lot of time to actually spend any money. And in 8 months, we haven't hardly talked about it. So maybe new members, new energy, we can.
Keep in mind, we've only had 4 meetings this year.
But I mean, come on, it's not their fault that we haven't talked about spending money. Like
we haven't had enough. We haven't had quorum for many meetings, and we've had.
And in those meetings, we haven't talked about it. So yeah, sure.
This is where I think a working session will help. Yeah.
So what is the quorum?
What is quorum? Half plus 1. Yeah. Okay. So we're at time at 7:30. We'll have to take up the secretary elections at the next meeting. Was anybody interested in running for that?
I was considering that.
You were considering?
Only keeping the minutes, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so right now, is it just being pulled off of the audio or something? Or is it not minutes being?
We only have the room till 7:30,
I
right?
don't know what your secretary's practice was in the past.
Yeah, it's keeping the minutes. Yep, and distributing
Can I
them.
make a motion to extend the meeting for 5 minutes so we can vote?
You can.
Secretary? I make a motion to extend the meeting for
Is there a
5 minutes.
second? Okay, great. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Abstentions? Okay, we have until 7:35, I guess, 7:36. Great. Are there any other? Yeah.
I make a motion to to nominate, thank you, Zero as the secretary.
I'll second that.
Okay, perfect. So we have a nomination. Do you accept the nomination?
Certainly.
Okay, perfect. Did you want to say anything to make your case?
Have experience.
What else can we do? What else can we do?
Perfect. Okay, so we have a nomination on the table for the position of secretary. Are there any other nominations for this position? Okay.
I'll try to improve. Some minutes are way too abbreviated. Don't get the meat of the matter.
There you go. Okay, so seeing no other nominations, we'll move to the vote. This is going to have to be a roll call vote because it is a big vote. So we will go around the room. Okay, Tara. No, this is
Aye.
Yeah. Justin, I vote aye. Okay. Matt.
Aye.
Zero.
Aye. Yes.
John.
Aye.
Dave.
Yes. Aye.
Jessica Davis is not here. Hunter.
Aye.
Jamie.
Aye.
Evan.
Aye.
Caitlin is not here. Dennis is not here. Dave.
Aye.
Okay, and Andrew is not here. So the ayes have it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Got 10 people here. Great. Congratulations. You are now the secretary, and we now have our executive committee filled.
Yeah, make use of them quorums while you got them.
Excellent. All right, and we've got a couple minutes to spare, so we'll let you out early. Assuming I hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and without objection, we are adjourned at 7:34 p.m. Our next meeting will be September 10th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in this room. Thanks, everybody.